There you go.
Okay.
You're recording. Excellent.
Okay.
Great.
So I don't know if I'll start just yet because I'm hearing children.
Yeah. So I guess I'll hop off. Um,
Okay.
yeah. And it was lovely to see you, Harris.
Nice. I'd like to have a chat with you sometime.
That'd be wonderful. And I look
Yeah,
forward
let's
to
do it.
yeah, I look forward to hearing this interview.
Absolutely.
So we're only
Good.
recording Harris's image. Is that correct, Adrian?
Um, no, so okay. If you go up to view, then if you click on speaker view, then the speaker in the top right corner, then the speaker will be, the largest image. And I believe in the recording, whoever is speaking is going to be the image that you see in the recording.
Okay. So what do I put it as? I've got mute my audio, start video.
And I just, when Harris is speaking, when you're
Yeah.
speaking, I would unmute. When Harris is speaking, mute, and then it should work.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. Let me see. Actually, if I click end, I think I'm going to end the meeting for all of us. I don't know if I can leave. So I'll just unmute and leave my computer open, or mute myself and leave my computer open while you all
Okay.
get started. Okay.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Take
right.
care. Good to see y'all.
Hey, Adrian.
Okay, Harris, I'm going to start with the questions
Yeah.
and get a bit of background from you about when and where you were opened and
Yep.
stretches you spent in various countries.
Okay. I can answer all those questions. I was opened in California in 1968, but don't ask me the date. I'm really hopeless with dates. Barely remember my own birthday. But it was 1968, and I was opened like a lot of people at that time because I came in contact with Hussein Chang, who was a Chinese American Subud member who was an expert in psychodrama. And at that time, I was living in Palo Alto, Stanford University, and he was very well known in the whole area around San Francisco because he ran these psychodrama marathons where 40 people got together at 9 o'clock on a Friday night and did psychodrama nonstop till noon on Sunday and entered various strange states as a result. A lot of people came into Subud through Hussein. And I remember after I'd been doing this psychodrama with him for a while, I said, Hussein, I heard you're in some spiritual thing. What is it? And he said, it's called Subud. And as soon as I heard that word Subud, I knew it was the magic word I've been looking for all my life. And of course, a lot of people report that. It's a common experience. They just hear the word without knowing anything about it. They know that this is the thing they've been searching for all their lives.
Right.
And that's how it was for me.
Okay.
Oh, and you asked, you want to know what countries I've been in?
Yeah, where you were opened and stretches you've spent in various countries since then.
Yeah, so of course, yeah, I was in America. I was at Stanford University. I had a writing fellowship there. Indonesia is the country I visited most often. I don't know how many times I've been to Indonesia. Maybe it's 20, 25 times. I don't know, a lot of times. I went there before I was in Subud. It's kind of interesting because I read a book about Bali and I saw these photos of Balinese rituals. And I thought if I could go to Bali and become involved in that, that would be the answer to my problems. So I had a kind of inkling that some spiritual experience was to be found in Indonesia. But strangely enough, I found it, a couple of years later in California. But I had a really good time in Indonesia, a really exciting time. I loved the place. And of course, since being in Suba, I've been there many, 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 many times. I've been to Cuba recently. I was really excited about going to Cuba, and for a long time, a Cuban Subud member had translated Subud voice for us. I had a great time in Cuba. I've been in Brazil. I love Brazil. Had great times in Brazil. Mexico, went to the Congress there, lots of nice times there. I've been to a lot of European countries. I lived in England. I've been to Ireland, France, Spain, all the usual places. So I've traveled
Well,
quite a lot. Yeah.
okay. All right. And then you had some work as a television producer for the ABC Corporation. How did that?
Yeah. Okay.
How,
So briefly, I was in America on this writing fellowship. Then I came back to Australia. And for a while, I worked as a university lecturer. And then one day, a television producer from the ABC came for some class I was running. And he said, oh, there's some jobs coming up at the ABC. And I'd already started working in film. I'd already started writing cop shows, TV cop shows. There was a lot of Australian cop shows at that time. And so I applied for this job with the ABC and I got it. I was a producer, which in that context meant I was also a director and also a writer. And I produced mostly documentary films. I worked there for 10 years. I produced some children's programs, but mostly documentary films. And I produced a lot of documentary films about Australian history, culture, and identity. I produced two big series which covered Australia from like 1900 up to 1975. And that was like my major achievement. I produced about 50 programs while I was working at the ABC, which is quite a lot.
yeah, that's
10 years.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Did you produce the videos about Bapak, the man and his mission that were shown at the 11th World Congress in Bali? And
Yeah.
if so, did
Mhm.
you want to comment on what was involved in getting them ready, and are they still accessible?
Yeah. So the initiative for that came from Ruckman Connolly. Ruckman Connolly at that time was very rich. He still may be, for all I know, but anyway, he was certainly rich then. And he supported a lot of projects in Rungansari for Bapak Centenary. And, he and Hamid Silver and Bradford Temple and other people, they put a lot of money into creating the infrastructure that was going to be needed for the Congress that coincided with Bapak Centenary. Well, as we all know, communal violence broke out in Kalimantan and we couldn't hold the Congress there. But, great that the infrastructure was built. And then as well as that, Ruckman had the idea of doing these videos about the history of Subud and Bapak's life. Because I had a background as a television producer, he asked me to do it.
Right.
So I was supported by Ruckman and Bradford. They put, quite a lot of money into it. They paid me some money, which is like unique in my Subud experience of doing projects. They gave me some money, and in order to make those films, what I first had to do was create the film archive. So there was, I think, a year or two spent gathering film from all around the world, and then I edited it. So it's 3 programs called Bapak the Man and His Mission. Each one's about an hour and a half long. And then there's a compilation program which gives you the whole story in a neat 60-minute format. And they keep being shown. They're still very relevant. Maybe someday someone will come along and do something better, but you can't do much different from what we did because we used just about every inch of film that was available, we used to make those programs. But, maybe at some point in the future, there'll be a different perspective and somebody will make them maybe even better. But they're pretty good. I mean, they're pretty good. You could show them on TV. I think they're a reasonably professional standard. And I think the story that they tell is a story that most Subud members could agree with. The story of Bapak's life and the story of how Subud developed. It's all pretty standard, basic. I think the way, the mainstream view of what it's all been about. So I'm quite happy with them. And they're still being shown. Last year, there was a big meeting, what was it? Some meeting of Bapak's birthday, that's right. The international helpers organized to show all those programs around Bapak's birthday. And also we've been telling them, you can go to Subud Voice and you can buy the rights to view all those programs. One of the things I'd like to do is also make them available to the Spanish speaking world, but we haven't quite found out. We have them translated into Spanish, but we haven't quite found out how to distribute them. Or someone told me, look, people in Latin America, they just got no money at all. You won't be able to charge them anything. And that makes it kind of a bit difficult to, find even a little bit of money that's needed to make that possible. Maybe some rich Spanish person will give us some money and we'll make those videos available to the Spanish speaking world.
Okay. So are they available on YouTube, or how would you find them?
No, they're not available on YouTube. I mean, we kept the rights to them because, well, first of all, I put an enormous amount of work in. I'm talking
Right.
about 3 years just about full-time work. Secondly, Subwood Voice is really, really hard to keep going financially in the present climate. Even though, our budget's practically nothing, it's still very hard to find the necessary money. So selling the rights to those videos was one way we were able to raise some money. Yeah.
Okay. So we would just contact Subwood Voice, in other words.
Yeah.
Okay,
Go to
great.
Subwood Voice. And we've got quite a good shop organized. And,
Okay.
they can write to me, subwoodvoice@gmail.com.
Okay, great. All right. And then the next question is, any media project you have been involved in since then, which you would like to highlight?
You mean Subwood Media or outside Subwood Media?
Just either one.
Well, books is the other thing I've done in Subwood. I've written some books, I think maybe 3 or 4. What are they called? 16 Steps, Stella. Anyway, a couple of others. I can't think of all the titles right now. So yeah, they've written them over the years. I don't think there've been any other major video projects in Subwood that I've done in Subwood. Books, we've produced quite a few books that we sell now through our shop and stuff. In the outer world, after I left the ABC, I worked as a freelance kind of producer for a while, and then what did I do? Oh yeah, then I started working for Project Sunrise in Sydney, which is a very exciting project. Didn't quite come off, but it was very exciting while it was happening. And I was involved in thinking up scenarios for theme parks and filming, doing a lot of filming to background the things we were doing, which was creating leisure projects and urban redevelopment projects. So that was pretty big and pretty exciting while it was going on.
Okay.
And then yep, that's enough of that.
Yep. Actually, I'll
quickly mention a couple of other main things I've done, which is for about 10 years, I was the director of an agency of the Uniting Church, which did programs for homeless people and people with psychiatric illnesses, using the arts and culture, and also creating very innovative forms of Christian worship. And then after that, I've mostly been like a freelance, small-time producer, like of plays. I like doing plays which have music in them. And so I've written a lot of music, I've written plays, and then I produced and directed them. I organised a big music festival up here in the place where I'm now living. I'm living in the country in northern New South Wales near a town called Yukai. And 10 years ago, I organised the Ukulele Festival, music festival. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think that's the main things I've done.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to switch tracks. How did you come to editing Subwood Voice?
I'd always had a close relationship with Elena Leonard, who began it. I mean, I've known her probably even right when she began Subwood Voice, which was in 1987. She and her husband Lawrence were very good friends of mine. I lived with them for a while in England. Elena was a lovely person and a very, very, very committed Subwood member, and many marvelous projects. Subwood Voice was just one of them. Anyway, so I was always a contributor to Subwood Voice. I always knew Elena well. And then she reached a point where she was not well enough to continue. So she asked me to do it. And again, Connolly Temple, Ruckman Connolly and Bradford Temple really helped out by providing some money, which made it possible. So that's how it all began. I think I began doing it in 2001.
Around there, right? Okay. So
yeah, it was either 2001 or 2000. I never remember. Maybe it was 2000.
So can you remember one or two articles which you published, which you would consider memorable? like just over the years?
Well, I think, yeah, I think there are really, I mean, really a lot that are memorable. I mean,
Mhm.
when you look at the Subwood Voice archive, it's like several million words, and we covered just so many things. We have so many interviews with people who've been important in Subwood. But there are 3 articles that I can think of that I feel particularly proud to have published.
Mhm.
And these are the ones that people constantly bring up to me. People, more than any other articles we've ever published, these are the ones people come to me and remind me. So one is an article by Mahmoud Fedorowicz. Mahmoud Fedorowicz was the first youth coordinator of Subud Youth.
Yeah.
Uh, and he was a very interesting person. He was a heroin addict who reformed and then become a very, very committed Subud member. And he was an artist. In particular, towards the end of his life, he was a brilliant painter. Anyway, he wrote. He came to Melbourne after he became the youth coordinator. He went on a trip around the world, kind of energizing youth. And he came to Melbourne and he gave a talk. And the talk was wonderful, and the young people loved him. And a woman, Simone Mulder, wrote down what he said, and then she gave it to me, and I published it in Subwood Voice, and it really impresses people. It's just a short article in which Mahmoud described a moment in his life where he became very frustrated with Subwood. He was just ready to give up and walk away, and then he had a really powerful mystical experience. So that's one. People always say, "Oh, yeah, that was a great article he wrote." I think I might publish it again soon, actually. Just people like to read it from time to time. The other one is an article written by Helene McCall, who's an American Subwood member, who wrote an article about doing the Ladihan. It's kind of an article intended for younger members, but it's such a good article. Anyone can learn from it. Anyone can appreciate it. And then later on, too, Halima also did a series of articles about her meetings with Ibu Rahayu, her relationship with Ibu Rahayu, and they're really good also. And then the third one, which in my mind is really outstanding, is that Rashida Pope, who's the daughter of one of the daughters of
Salama.
Lama, and he wrote. She had this amazing series of past life experiences when she was only 17. In a very short space of time, I think it was only like a couple of weekends, like hundreds of her past lives came like flooding through her. And so I interviewed her about that, and she talked about it very, very frankly. She's a lovely person. She's very modest, very humble. But when she has to, she will talk about these extraordinary experiences which she continues to have. And the really interesting thing about her series of past lives is the pattern or the rhythm. So, I mean, I don't know that she even remembers all the past lives, but what she remembers is the pattern. So, like in one life, she'd be a proud, arrogant king. The next life, she'd be like a blind beggar begging in the rain. There's a whole pattern of karma that was shown throughout her series. And she also, and because Subud members in general feel unsure about reincarnation, does it exist or doesn't it? She also wrote an accompanying article which includes references in Bapak's talks when he mentions past lives or reincarnation. So there are 3 or 4 articles, but like there's just so much in Subud Voice at the moment that is so great. I mean, just one example is Isti Jenkins, who was previously an international helper. She's been writing these articles on spiritual topics like reading Bapak. Now, I'm a person who's really bad at reading Bapak. I have this huge resistance to reading Bapak. I mean, I do occasionally manage to make the effort. But so she had written a really good article about reading Bapak's talks. How do you push through this resistance? And, she just describes in very great detail the benefits that she has received from reading Bapak's talks. Something like that is so, so important. And we've had a whole series of articles from her now on subjects like that.
Right.
So there you go.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And also you've probably published about 12 or 13 issues of Subud Voice per year since 2003. And so what sort of scenarios or themes?
Well, actually, I think it's 2000.
2000?
I think actually it's 2000, Rosina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Or definitely 2001. Definitely started earlier than 2003. Yes. So sorry, what was your question again?
so I'm looking for the sort of scenarios or themes for issues that came about, if and your readership as well. Has that remained stable or increased?
Okay. So
There's two
first of all, there are
questions.
always 12 issues every
Okay,
year. And not 12 or 13, 12. And
okay,
my proudest boast in life, the thing of which I'm proudest of anything I've ever done, is that every issue of Subud Voice I have ever done has come out on the first day of the month it was supposed to come out. So on the
wonderful.
1st of April, the next issue will come. Well, I must touch wood, of course, because having said this, I'm in big trouble now. But up until now, I never failed to bring an issue out on the date it was supposed to come out. It's been the most
Okay.
regular thing in my life. You know, there are many benefits to doing Subud Voice. Keeps me connected to the world, Subud world, and everything. But it's the one regular thing in my life, because just about everything else I do is kind of shapeless and formless and spread over long periods of time, and you never know whether you finished it or is it not finished. And the Subud Voice, it's like this very regular thing that I always do, and that's been a great kind of structure for my life.
Okay, talk about any themes that you might have noticed or patterns or,
Okay.
yeah,
Sure. So the big theme at the moment, of course, is COVID. You know, for the last year, 14 months, not every issue, but probably most issues, we've had something about COVID. Like the most recent one that's in the current issue is, you know, there was a Subud member old Subud member who wasn't sure whether he should have the vaccine jab or not. And he wrote about it, and other people wrote back to him with advice about practical advice and Ladihan advice. So I thought that was a really useful thing to do. And some people have written back to me and they've said, yes, yes. In particular, we recommended an article that appeared in the Atlantic Monthly, which is for people, you know, how to understand and cope with side effects of a jab.
Right.
So that's been really practical. And at the same time, there's more, you know, theoretical discussion about, you know, is it good to do the Ladihan? Does that help you in the virus in some strange mystical way? And so on and so on and so on.
okay. Okay, and how about your readership? Do you understand that it has increased or
No, it
stayed the
gets smaller
same?
and smaller and smaller and smaller
Really?
and smaller. Yeah.
Oh,
I
it's
mean, there's lots of
surprising.
reasons for that. There's lots of reasons for that. First of
Yeah,
all, Subud is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And the
really,
people in Subud are getting older and older and older. And
right.
just maybe they're not as active as they were. Also, we're actually only able to do it in English at the moment. So all the rest of the world, like, you know, the Spanish-speaking world, the French-speaking world, the Russian-speaking world, we can't reach them at all. You know, we can only barely scrape together enough money to do an English edition. So yeah, but so I'm just pleased that, you know, we can give people some useful information as well as interesting information in this time of virus. In general, Subud Voice over the course of a year tries to cover everything in Subud. And that's, you know, history, what happened in Coombe Springs back in 1987. It's Cecilia Dharma, it's Seeker, it's enterprises,
Right.
it's personal experiences, it's every aspect of Subud life. Sometimes we've had a theme, like a few years ago, I was very involved in Cecilia Dharma. And I went to the Cecilia Dharma annual meeting in Indonesia. And then, so that issue had a really strong Cecilia Dharma theme. Or maybe another issue will have a strong Seeker theme. And of course, I've covered every World Congress. That's another thing I'm really proud of, because, you know, if it wasn't for what we've done in Subud Voice, there wouldn't be any kind of record, you know, no personal record of those events. You know, we're the only ones who've done it. So I'm really pleased about that. So that's another theme. Whenever Congress comes around, of course, you know, we always try to be there and cover it. Generally devote a couple of issues to it.
Okay, so previously you did have some translated issues
Yeah.
in,
The only long-term one we had was with Spain, a Spanish speaking,
right,
which was with a guy in Cuba. Because we were able to pay practically nothing, And because he was a very generous and committed Silwood member, he was prepared to do it for virtually nothing.
Mhm.
It's just a question of money, like, you know,
Yeah,
I mean, Spanish speaking is obviously the first language to go for because it's the biggest pool of Silwood members.
yeah,
French, on the other hand, is pretty minority. Um, Russian, maybe there'll be a big Silwood explosion in Russia.
right.
Anyway, we do what we can. I'm one 78-year-old guy, and then there's Marcus Bolt, who I think is another 78-year-old guy. And then there's Kitka, who, lives in Australia, and compared to us, she's like really youthful. I won't dare to speculate about her age, but compared to Marcus, he's kind of
Okay.
like youth. So, it's this tiny team, tiny, 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 tiny team. And the magazine, I mean, I have to say, I think it's amazingly good quality. I mean, particularly the most recent issues. One thing that's happened is we get fewer and fewer readers and they write more and more and more. And especially in COVID, it's really been noticeable. I think everyone's sitting around the house not knowing what
Right,
to do. And a
right.
huge avalanche of material reaches me. I've probably got enough material on the spike now to go to at least, like three or four issues without, asking for any more material from anybody.
Right.
And yeah.
So next question is, can we hear an anecdote or two about how you came to be a better editor and how the Latihan has played a part in that? So basically that question.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because there are many aspects to editing. Some of it's just technical, trying to correct the mistakes in articles and
Right.
so on, which, I'm not the world's best at that, but yeah, I can do that. Okay. But it's relationships, that's what's great about it. It's relationships with people, like you're a good example, recently we've been having more of a relationship with you because you gave us some articles about Masaji, and then you gave us that wonderful article about Indigenous life in Canada. By the way, did you notice how in that Silwood Voice, it's a very good connection between, there's an article in that magazine about a project here where I'm living called Echo Camp Retreat, which is not an Indigenous program, but it includes some kind of Indigenous elements. And it's all about, creating a sustainable project. And then that goes really well because the last thing I mentioned in that is how Australians' attitudes to their land is now being very much influenced by Indigenous attitudes to
Right.
land. And that worked very well into your article about Indigenous matters in Canada. It's really good.
Okay. And
What else? Oh, anecdotes about me being an editor. Well,
yes.
something I must tell you is there's a very good Scottish writer, and he had a big success with a series of books about an African woman running a private detective agency. And then he's written lots and lots more books. And one series he has is about a woman living in Edinburgh who edits a tiny philosophical journal. They have about 3,000 subscribers, which is much more than we do. We had 3,000 subscribers at one point, but not anymore. Anyway, I often, get inspired by her and compare my experiences to her. Like very, very, very occasionally, you have problems. You strike some person who's really kind of demented on some subject and wants you to publish their articles in every issue of Silwood Voice.
Right.
They're definitely not mainstream voice. So occasionally, you do learn to deal with, difficult personalities. That's a plus. I won't mention any names, but so I sometimes I have an attitude, I'm going to be very firm. I'm going to say to this person, look, your point of view is really weird, But I found you can never, ever alter anyone's point of view or attitude. It's much better just to be nice and friendly about it.
Right. Right.
And
That's
certainly not try
interesting.
and change that person's point of view, because that's the portal to trouble.
Right. Right.
And
That's
that's the kind of
interesting.
trouble this woman has editing her magazine in Edinburgh also. So I learned from her.
Right. And any other thing in which that you recall in which the Latihan has played a part in? Maybe you've been having a quiet period and all of a sudden something comes to mind, or in
Yeah,
relation
well, I
to
mean, it's
Subud
all,
Boys?
I mean, it's totally permeated. It's totally permeated with the Ladihana. I mean, you know, as much as I can, you know, I try to have good working habits. And yeah,
Mhm.
what's really important is Marcus Bolt and I, we really communicate a lot. You know, we have Skype calls at least once a month. And I just constantly, so brotherhood is what it's all about. I mean,
Yeah.
Kitka, I also have a very nice relationship with, but she's not involved. You know, she's looking after the whole web thing, where she is so totally reliable and competent and, you know,
What's her name
issues.
again?
Kitka, Kitka. She is of
Okay.
Finnish origins, but she's a Subud member who's living in Australia for many years. But
Okay.
Marcus and I, we are locked. You know, we are like just two sides of the one person when it comes to Subud Boys. Because he not only does the layout, which is fantastic, but he's also a very good writer and probably a much better editor than me, but you know.
Okay,
So
great.
he's always a big support, and he's someone that, you know, I can talk things over with if we ever have any problems. So just, you know, my personal approach is, you know, guided as much as possible by the Ladihan. And collectively, it's the power of brotherhood, of unity. I couldn't do it by myself. I'd be so bored and I'd be so sad. I couldn't do it. You know. Thank
Mhm.
God for Marcus.
Well, I wonder if we had a few more meetings that were we could meet in person, there would be more interest in Subud Voice because it's been around regularly for such a long time. So that must have made a difference that in the recent year or two we
Okay,
had.
I'll tell you what. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of reasons why our readership has gone down. First of all, you know, the older people are either dying or they're not as active as they were. They don't feel it's as important to read all the magazines.
Right.
Secondly, the young people on the whole, it is true, the young people on the whole are not into like reading lengthy screeds, you know. But the other thing is, when Elena began Subud Voice in 1987, it was the only publication.
Yeah.
And she could put anything she liked in it. She could put Papa Talks in it, and that's probably what people valued more than anything else. As the organization became more organized, now I can't publish Papa Talks anymore because in our publication, the magazine is accessible to the general public. Anyway, there's lots of discussion that can happen around that. But the thing is, there are now so many magazines. We have Asana Vaughan, Subud World News, excellent, absolutely excellent. Fortunately, there is a distinction between Subud World News and us in that she mostly focuses on what's very current. So that's great. You know, someone's doing a project, they usually send it to Asana before they send it to me. And that leaves a whole other lot of stuff that we can do, spiritual experiences, histories, you know, all of that. So it's great. There's a clear differentiation between what we both do, and we have a very friendly relationship, and it's great. But then, you know, Subud Canada, they put out a very good magazine called Scan. Subud Britain puts out a journal, which I think is now on a fortnightly or monthly basis.
Right.
Seeker puts out a newsletter. Muhammad Subud puts out a newsletter. WSA puts out a newsletter. The International Helpers. It's such a flood of news. You know, Zone
Yeah.
5 puts out a newsletter. It's a
Okay.
huge flood. So, you know, how you keep up with it all, I don't know. I mean, it's like my professional role to keep up with it, and I don't keep up with it that well. I'm generally aware of what's going on, but I don't read it all. So, you know, the competition with Subud Boys. So, you know, there's our reasons. You know, the older people are not reading so much. The younger people aren't reading. If you do want to read, there's, you know, 20 other things you can go to which may be more relevant to you. So I just accept it. I mean, if only one person was reading Subud Boys, I'd still do it with as much enthusiasm, because I really do believe that we're doing it for the people in 800 years' time. You know, I honestly, sincerely believe that. And all the people in between now and 800 years, you know, we're just such a huge, valuable resource about life in Subud, you know, in the early days. That's all. I just do it for my own satisfaction primarily. And then, you know, and then hoping that it strikes an echo with at least some people in the Subud world. And we still do have lots of readers. You know, they're now in the hundreds rather than the thousands, but it doesn't bother me in the least. And also, I'm a believer that, you know, there could be a sudden explosion of Subud. You know, tomorrow it could suddenly explode. I
Right.
mean, it's probably not going to happen in England, for example, in the COVID climate. But, you know, I mean, I belong to an extremely active Subud group and vibrant and close and loving. And we're not attracting new members at the moment, but I believe that we're creating the platform that will bring new members. And I'm sure that's happening in other places too. So I sometimes think Subud will shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink until it's just a tiny little glowing like a ruby, and then it'll go pow, and it'll be like the Big Bang all over again.
All right.
And we'll be ready for it. We'll be ready for it.
Okay.
And maybe
Okay,
we'll make some money. Maybe we'll make some money.
Yeah, that'll be the day, won't it? Okay.
Well, I believe it's entirely possible. I mean, that's what happened last time. Exploded out of nowhere, and then that's what will happen again. The process is guided by God, and we only understand it a tiny little bit. So, and all we can do is, be our best. I mean, that's the only thing we can do is try and be our best.
Yep,
And
I agree.
I'm sure it's going to happen.
Okay, so this brings to a close the questions I had, and I'm just going to ask something final for any final comments that you have.
Yep.
That you want to make.
Oh, comments that I want to make.
Any final comments? Something we might have missed or whatever.
Well, I wrote a book called The Adventure of Subud, and that's what Subud is to me. It's an adventure. It's a journey into the unknown. And of course, in some ways it's actually a real life adventure, like with the gold mining in Kalimantan, which was, a great adventure. But even if it's not an adventure in that sense, it's an inner adventure all the time. The opportunities for growth, the pain of failure. It's so classically an adventure story, and that's what I really value about something.
Okay, great. That's good. Thanks.
Yep. Lovely to meet you. Lovely to meet you after all these years.
Right.
Let's get
right.
together. I'm going to interview you. I'm going to find out what you're up to.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to know where you live and all that stuff.
Okay, then. We'll leave it for
Lovely
next
to talk
time.
to you.
Thank you.
Okay, then.
Okay, bye for now.
See you later.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye. I'm still here. Are you here?
Oh, bye.
I'm hoping that I'm